Welcome everyone to our Wednesday night devotional, COVID-19 style. I believe this is number 6 as far as this video format, but I'm hoping you're doing well. Hope you're safe and healthy, and if there are those who are feeling the impact of this virus, we certainly want to be in prayer and continue to look for ways to love and to encourage during some very difficult times. Hopefully, this virus will clear out sooner than later, and we can get back to our normal lives. But one of the things that I've been thinking quite a bit or following is these themes that develop, and one of the current themes is who's to blame for this virus? Whose fault is it? Where did it come from? How did this happen? And there's many theories out there, including some conspiracy theories, which may or may not have any validity to them. I've seen stories recently about certain journalists over in China no longer, their whereabouts are no longer known. That's kind of scary, whether this came out of a lab intentionally or whether this was an accident. I read an article recently that suggested that maybe certain data was held for a long time so that a certain group could have be the quicker one to get the vaccine or something to that effect. And I don't know if there's any truth to not. Some people are placing the blame on this virus on the geographical location where it came from. Others are placing the blame on the U.S. President and any other number of people or things to place blame. And I know that part of the idea of blame or identifying fault is a good thing in a sense. I think in theory that you can once you know where a problem begins, you can then go about trying to formulate a solution. And if you're able to identify what went wrong or who did wrong, you can hopefully stop that behavior as soon as possible so that the situation doesn't get any worse. And then you can start trying to pick up the pieces, start trying to make amends, trying to make progress of a goal of making the situation better and not making it any worse. I understand the idea of identifying who or what went wrong or who or what is at fault. But putting the COVID-19 blame discussion on hold, I want to talk a few moments about a dynamic that happens many times within our own lives, within our own relationships, whether this is at home or at school or at work, whether this is with spouse or children or parents or friends or coworkers or whatever, sometimes even in church as well. And it's the dynamic that we'll just call tonight blaming and shaming. And when people get into a pattern of blaming and shaming, the situation typically does not get any better anytime soon. And in fact, it will typically get a whole lot worse. Now, I know that one of the phrases, and I'm just being real and transparent here, one of the phrases that I cannot stand to this day is the phrase, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Do you say that phrase a lot? Has that phrase been told to you? How does that make you feel? You should be ashamed of yourself. Well, maybe this goes back to a traumatic experience when I was in high school. I use the word traumatic loosely. I really shouldn't use that word at all. It's not traumatic, but hey, I still remember this moment to this day. But I don't remember the exact circumstance. All I know is me and a couple friends were standing in the lunch line at Destrand High School, waiting to waiting to get our food. And I don't remember what happened, but all I know is that one of the lunch monitors was extremely upset. And my friend that was standing right next to me, she looked right at him and she said, she pointed her finger and said, "Go to the office right now. I'm writing you up. You're getting a detention." And she looked over right at me and said, "Eric, and you should be ashamed of yourself." Whoa. And I stopped right there in my tracks, and I remember feeling at that moment, I wish she would have just sent me to the office and wrote me up and have to deal with that. But the fact that she told me it was a wake up call. It got my attention, and that statement, it made me stop doing that, whatever we were up to. Who knows? Probably just clowning around of some sort. But Eric, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I knew that she knew me, and she knew that of who I was, and she knew that that's not the type of thing that I typically do. And I want to tell you, her telling me that at that moment was completely effective, because I straightened my act up. And to this day, when I think about that, I just it was a moment, and we never had that issue again. And I actually still see this now retired lunch monitor from time to time, and it's it I that's what I remember, and I'm actually thankful for that. And sometimes we do things that we are ashamed of, and we feel that shame, and we don't need anyone else. And sometimes others identifying that could actually, I suppose, be a good thing, as it was in this case. But I would suggest to you that those situations are the exception, not the norm. And the more and more we use the phrase, "you should be ashamed of yourself," is only likely going to make the peer person feel worse, and will likely not result in them doing what we want them to do more of or less of in the future. I, I'm looking at a passage tonight in Luke chapter 12, and I invite you to turn your Bibles there just for a couple of moments. Luke chapter 12, Jesus is teaching and utilizing the parable style. Parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And in Luke chapter 12, beginning in verse 35, Jesus says, "Let your waist be girded and your lamps burning, and you yourselves be like men who wait for their master when he will return from the wedding, that when he comes and knocks, they may open to him immediately. Blessed," by the way, look for the connection between blessing and serving. "Blessed are those servants whom the master, when he comes, will find watching. Assuredly, I say to you that he will gird himself and have them sit down to eat, and he will come and serve them. And if he should come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed this house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." Peter then said to Jesus, "Lord, do you speak this parable only to us or to all people?" And the Lord said, "Who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his master will make ruler over his household, to give them portion of food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes." I want to challenge you tonight, instead of focusing so much on blaming and shaming, to try to focus instead on blessing and serving. So we're trying to say no to blaming and shaming, and try to say yes to blessing and serving. So what are you going to do the next time someone does you wrong? Oh, the audacity of this person. or when I get done with this person, they are going to be ashamed of themselves. They're going to feel horrible for what they did to me, and you can blame and you can shame, and it will maybe for a moment make you feel better and make them feel worse, and you'll get some sense of temporary gratification on that. But what about blessing and serving instead? Instead of trying to shame them to make them feel worse, that's what blaming and shaming is all about. You want others to feel pain, right? Instead of trying to shame them to make them feel worse, try to serve them to try to help them do better. Blessing and serving. When we strive to serve others, they will be blessed and we will be blessed. When we strive to bless and serve others instead of blame and shame, but when we try to bless and serve others, the focus gets away from who's at fault, and it gets more in the area of, okay, what can we do to move on, to not get stuck? I do a lot of work with couples, and a lot of couples get into a difficult spot in their marriage, and they start there's an ongoing pattern of blaming and shaming. You talk to the husband, it's the wife's fault. You talk to the wife, it's the husband's fault. It's always someone else's fault. No one likes to take responsibility for anything, right? But sometimes couples get into what's called emotional gridlock, where they're both holding their ground and neither one of them going to budge, and they keep blaming and shaming the other person, waiting for the other person to change. Well, that pattern of blaming and shaming in marriage, as in every other relationship, typically does more long-term good. It typically does more long-term harm than it does good. And the longer we blame and shame in our marriage, the longer we blame and shame with our kids or with our parents, the longer we blame and shame with whatever or whoever we're upset with, then the more miserable we're going to be, and the longer the problem is going to stay there. But if we want to solve the problem, if we want to be able to move on, if we want to start feeling better, if we want to restore and repair the relationship, put the blame and the shame on the side and focus instead on blessing and serving. What happens if Jesus were to come, as Luke 12 verse 40 says? What is he going to find you doing? Trying to blame everyone else for all the problems in your life? Or is he going to come and find you trying to bless the other people in your life? Is he going to come and constantly find you shaming and making others people try to feel worse? Or is he going to come and find you serving others, trying to make them feel and be and do better? The choice is yours. We can live a life trying to blame and shame others, or we can live a life of striving to bless and to serve others. Go back, read Luke 12 verses 35 through 42 and see the connection between blessing and serving. And I promise you, following the Lord's way, following his words, life will go a whole lot better. And this blaming and shaming game can be put to an end in our lives. And the Lord will be proud of us. The Lord will be pleased with us. And when he comes, he'll find us ready because we've been watchful, we've been serving, and we're ready to do his will in our lives. More next time. I hope this has been helpful to you. Have a great rest of the week.